The French election is entering its final lap, with the election of France's new president only days away. Emmanuel Macron, the young centrist candidate considered to be establishment, faces Marine Le Pen, a controversial figure who's been described by much of the mainstream media as a right-wing populist figure. The first round ended with pollsters being justified in their predictions. Macron got around 24%, with Marine Le Pen at around 21%, both of them making to the second and final round of the French election. Pollsters and analysts alike now predict a landslide victory for Macron on the 7th of May. Let's dig in and look at the final act of the French election saga. I'm Michael Solon, and this is Real Matters. French polls released in recent days by various research centers seem to all predict a similar outcome, this being a strong victory for Emmanuel Macron over Marine Le Pen. Reuters compiled 10 of the most popular polls which demonstrate the general consensus that Macron will achieve around 60% of the vote, to Marine Le Pen polling at around 40%. If we take an average of the top 8 French polls, we get a result of 62.2% for Macron and Marine Le Pen at 37.8%, with a margin of error of between 2 and 3%, and a total of 14,319 people surveyed. It's clear that most of the major polls predict an outright victory for Emmanuel Macron. Polls in the first round of the election were remarkably accurate, with research centers predicting Macron achieving around 24% and Le Pen at around 22%. Macron slightly performed better and Le Pen slightly worse than predicted. If we assume that most of François Fillon's voters, who came third with 20%, go towards Macron as predicted in the final election, and then the close fourth place contender Mélenchon's voters, splitting between the two frontrunners, it becomes apparent why it looks more than likely Macron will pull in front with a considerable lead. Recent polls for the final round arguably demonstrate this shift. If you want to see more on Marine Le Pen's policies and more reports on the European elections in 2017, click subscribe right down here, or click the card on top, which gives you a link to another video. This being said, all polls have their limitations, and the inaccuracies of polls have been a hot topic ever since the election of Donald Trump in the United States and the Brexit vote. In both cases, polls proved quite inaccurate. The French regulatory authority on polling demands the use of the quota method for conducting polls. It has the advantage of allowing much quicker sampling and is much easier to carry out. The limitations of this technique is that in quota sampling, the sample has not been chosen using random selection, which makes it impossible to determine the possible sampling error. This also means that samples could have bias based on the questioner choosing cases which may not represent the population and potentially subject to false generalization. Even with these disadvantages, the accuracy they showed in the first round suggests that researchers are implementing the quota method meticulously and relatively accurately. During Brexit and the election of Donald Trump, polls and pollsters were criticized for their inability to predict either result and their completely one-sided approach on both Brexit and the election, which proved to be completely wrong. This has led many of us to rightly question polls more, and to look at the details of the poll before accepting them as an accurate prediction. The main difference in French polls is that, unlike in the United States, the margins Macron has over Le Pen are much larger. For example, polls in the United States in November predicted a win for Hillary Clinton, polling 3 to 6% higher than Trump, much lower than the 20% difference currently being observed in France. Considering this and the accuracy of polls in the first round using the same method, it seems more than likely that Macron will win with a sizable margin. This being said, 2017 seems to be ushering in a year of change, and a potential upset is always possible. Thank you guys so much for watching. French elections are happening in a couple of days. What do you guys think? Who do you think's gonna win? I'm including a link to buy me a beer in the description of this video. So if you want to support Real Matters and you like this episode, help me out and buy me a beer. Thank you guys again. Peace.